Ukraine continues to receive weapon supplies from the United States despite the change in government, while there is some ruckus in the Ukrainian media, as supposedly the head of the military intelligence said in a meeting that if negotiations don't start within 6 months, the existence of Ukraine is in danger. We'll look into this as well as about what has happened along the front lines and behind them in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. Surfshark VPN is sponsoring this channel for this month. If you want to bypass geo-blocking or hide your internet activity all with a convenient app, then use Surfshark VPN for just $2.09 a month by using my link. You get 4 months extra as well. Thank you, Surfshark, for sponsoring this channel. Once again, Ukraine has struck the Ryazan oil refinery. Again, fire has started. The full extent of the damage is impossible for me to determine, but it was struck again. The Ukrainian president is reporting about the number of weapons being used against his country in the last week. According to him, in the last week, the Russians have used 1,250 gliding bombs, 750 attack drones, as well as 20 missiles against his country. We'll switch to the developments along the front line, and we start as usually with Kursk. Here the Russians are reporting Ukrainian activity at the town of Tyotkino, which is here in the west. According to them, there happened a Ukrainian attack, and as you can see, it shows a MRAP that is being targeted by an FPV drone. In other videos, they do show that 2 MRAPs have been destroyed by the Russian FPV drones, showing that there was an attack or there was some activity. Interesting enough, interesting too is that those 2 MRAPs are being stopped next to barbed wire. So there was activity along the border, but it's not clear whether they've been stopped right at the border. It was definitely not a big attack into Russian-held territory or into Russia itself. That was it, what I have in changes along the front lines here, or in things happening from Kursk. I have fresh geolocations at various points, but nowhere in an area that was considered before to be held by the other side, so it doesn't seem that the front line has moved in any measurable way. We switch to the area of Kharkiv, and here it's the same. Now fighting is happening. There's, for instance, a report of a mechanized attack in the direction of Tychy. But I do not see that anything was achieved by the Russians in those attacks. We'll switch to the Eastern Front, though, accordingly, and there the Russians have recently advanced. They captured this small forest here right north of Zapatne. This is now under Russian control. They continue extending their bridgehead over the Oskil here. According to the Ukrainians, they cross the river by night in small rubber boats with 5 to 8 men that are then probably going into the forested areas to gather and wait for reinforcements to then continue attacking. So far, no reports of mechanized attacks in any serious way here, so it doesn't seem like the Russians started to send heavy equipment to the other side. Further south, fighting is reported here and there, but I do not see any change in territory until we reach the Seversky Donetsk River, which is here. South of it, fighting in the direction of Seversk is reported, the same in Chasiv Yar, but in both cases, I do not see that anything has changed along the front lines. We switch to TETSK, and here the Ukrainians did a counterattack that is shown here, as you can see, with several armored vehicles, a tank and 2 MRAPs, and they entered the town here in the north. They were fighting there. This could be seen as a confirmation that the Russians were already holding the outskirts here and the Ukrainians were pushing back in. But as of now, there are claims from both sides that the city is not under full control by the Russians yet. The Russians claim that they have taken full control over Krimske. This seems to be the truth, at least according to the geolocations I've had recently, but as said, the majority of TETSK and Krimske is under Russian control. That much can be confirmed. We switch further west in the direction of Pokrovsk, and here the Russians managed to advance north of Kotline. We have a geolocation of this as well. Recently they have been here and in the direction of Udachne, like in this fields here. Now we have them in the next tree line further north of Kotline. So the Russians have roughly reached this line here with their recent attacks. Further south, they have entered the town of Nadezhdynka here. Here they managed to get a foothold west or advancing further west, and that seems to be it roughly from the Pokrovsk area. We have changes in further south. The Russians have advanced further west from Slovyanka. I have a geolocation as well from this. Here at Slovyanka, they advanced further west. It's already here on the map, I think. Yeah. So they have reached this point in their recent attacks, and they also have taken the forest line along a river here west of Petropavlivka. They took that area as well. They also reached the outskirts of Andrivka and seem to have gotten a foothold. At least that's what we see in both Deep State map as well as in the pictures. This is from Petrenko also confirming that the Russians entered the eastern part of Andrivka. Now the fighting for Andrivka has started here as well. I do not see any change along the territory that I can confirm further south until we reach Velika Novosilivka. Here the 110th Brigade was publishing that they are not in danger of being encircled. It was said that soldiers of the 110th Brigade have been cut off south of the river here. In this area, they claim that this is untrue, that they are not in danger of being encircled, and that fighting in Velika Novosilka was still continuing. But this was written yesterday on the 26th, so it might no longer be the truth. We also have visual evidence of the Russians having reached the outskirts of on the eastern side of Velika Novosilka at various points, but then again, this is already here on the map. Whether there's still Ukrainian presence in the last houses is unclear. The Russians claim, most of them claim that they have taken it. Ukrainians say there are still some remnants of their troops there. Last fighting is still happening, but I cannot confirm it as of now. Velika Novosilka has likely fallen. That seems to be the case as of now, even though I don't have a full confirmation as of yet. Further west in the direction of Orikhiv, here the Ukrainians report several attacks in the direction of Malatokmachka and north of Robotyne, but I do not see that anything has changed along the front line, that the Russians gained any additional territory here. Overall, the Ukrainian commander-in-chief, the Ukrainian president Zelensky has made General Drapati, the commander of the Hotutsia direction, that is responsible for the south and the east. So as far as I understand, the majority of this area here that is currently being threatened, this is where they are responsible, and he was made that. He is right now also the commander of the ground forces, and previously he was responsible for the defense of Kharkiv, where he stopped the Russians, and he was responsible for the front line in Luhansk. So he is somebody who delivers results according to the president, and he's now being made commander in this region on top of his job as commander of the ground forces. In international results, we also have some things. Orban has given up his veto, and the sanctions against Russia have been renewed. According to media reports, the threat of Trump in direction of Russia to add sanctions unless Russia goes to the negotiating table has led to Orban giving up his resistance, probably to not contradict Donald Trump, the new US president, by himself stopping sanctions against the Russians while Trump is threatening them in the Russian direction. Then the big outcry was an article here in the Ukrainian Pravda, and interestingly enough, that article is really long and is talking about the current situation. And in the very last part, it says, this is a computer translation, that there was a closed meeting held at the Rada, so at the Ukrainian president. At first, the representatives of the general staff talked a lot, confusingly but very interestingly. Then there were various other reports, but the most memorable was Budanov's answer. Budanov is the head of the military intelligence. Someone asked him how much time we still had, and Kirill, with his cold smile, said, if there are no serious negotiations by this summer, then very dangerous processes for the very existence of Ukraine may begin, recalls one of the meeting participants in a conversation with Ukrainian press. So according to this, and of course everyone looked at each other and fell silent. According to this, the Ukrainian head of the military intelligence has supposedly said if Ukraine doesn't start serious negotiations by summer, Ukraine might cease existing. This was published in Ukrainian media, and the military intelligence didn't wait for long once it became public, and they publicly said that this is untrue. Does not correspond to reality. So according to them, it's not true. We need to understand too that it says according to participants, so it's hearsay. But, and of course, the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian military intelligence would not want this published if it was in a closed meeting as well. So this needs to be understood. But the current state is that the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian military intelligence are claiming that this is not true, that Budanov has not said that very same thing. Of course, we can just speculate what has been the truth, but the fact is that Budanov has said that, has had it published, that he didn't say it. We'll have to continue observing how it continues, how it develops in this way. Then we have an article in a German newspaper about the military threat against NATO, a serious military threat for NATO. This is how Russia is rearming, and there it says that Russia has every month, it has more tanks, more ammunition, more missiles, more drones. Production is growing. The storage depots are growing as well. That's according to Major General Christian Freudig, who is the head of the Ukraine War Department in the Ministry of Defense. So he's the one who should know best in all of Germany from the military side what is happening in Russia in regards to the war in Ukraine. And he's saying Russia is getting stronger by the day. In 2028, as we can see here, Russia can be a serious military threat in conventional means. According to this, in 3 years, Russia might challenge NATO already with military means. This does not mean that Russia will be defeated according to that, but it means that Russia might feel strong enough to start a challenge. And obviously the goal would be to be strong enough to deter Russia, and that is being said in here. Now, while the depots are emptying, they are being emptied obviously because the tanks are being refurbished. And as Russia is advancing, it's able to recover some of the taken out tanks and repair them. But those are the things that Major General Freudig says. The Russians, according to him, are getting stronger by the day in both depot terms as well as in production terms. There, obviously, depot must exclude tanks. At least that's what's publicly visible from satellites. The depots are getting empty, but the active units are getting better equipped and they're growing as well. Those are the reports the Russians claim about themselves, and we have some kind of confirmation now from the German military as well. In military and in sabotage area, we have the fresh report that an undersea cable between Gotland, that's the Swedish island here, and Lithuania was cut. And according to the reports, it was cut by exterior influence, basically by sabotage, by something damaging it. Could have been an accident too, obviously, but now Sweden has seized a cargo ship after the damage, so the Swedes say that they likely found the culprit for this already. In troop generation or in reinforcement, we have news from Ukraine. Apparently, this is being spread around as a new mine that is being produced by the Ukrainians and supposedly dropped from drones. As you can see, it has a 3D printed head and some smaller piece below it. I think if it's dropped, then this should probably work like some kind of parachute to have this part here towards the top. And this looks to me like a cartridge. I'm not exactly sure. So this might just be a bullet inside a cartridge for a rifle with some kind of mechanism to ignite the the charge inside of the cartridge when it's being stepped on and thus hitting and hurting the foot, or it might include proper explosives with the aim to start a small explosion that is just being ignited by a cartridge that is being used for this case. This I cannot confirm at this just by looking at this, but it seems to be a clear anti-personnel mine to hurt the feet of those who step on them, and I guess the top here is made this way to make it less easy to spot, as our eye is looking at flat surfaces, and this looks more natural. But those are the reports from the activity here from the Russians. We have news about the political sphere too. Iran has now publicly confirmed that they bought Russian Sukhoi 35 jets. No information yet that I can find about the number and of course when they are supposed to be delivered. Two important questions, but the Iranians now publicly confirm that they ordered Sukhoi 35. Ukraine is getting more aid though, and Flight Radar has this. I found this here that the Ukraine that in the airport of Chezhov, I think that's how you pronounce it, in the airport of Chezhov, the transport planes are still landing daily from the United States, freighters, which would mean that the military aid that was started by Joe Biden has not stopped with Trump, even though he didn't announce additional aid. But we'll have to see how that continues in the future. The likely result will be that Trump is not going to send additional aid right now, as Biden has made sure that it's not necessary, at least if the promised aid is continued to be delivered. And this will give Trump some leeway in negotiations, and then he can threaten Russia if they don't do what he wants with additional military aid towards Ukraine as well, or he can threaten Ukraine to stop sending additional aid. All of this will obviously help Trump in his plan to negotiate some kind of settlement. Then we have reports that in Ukraine, VABs have appeared, a new type that has not been there yet. There's speculation where they come from, whether they are licensed produced models from the US, whether they are meant for somebody else, but it seems to have been equipped with a 30mm turret from the Ukrainian production. So additional APCs, or in this case wheeled IFVs, have appeared in Ukrainian service. That seems to be in testing though, as it has a camouflage or a paint pattern that is not usable or not very reasonable in Ukraine. Then Ukrainians are reporting that 1.5 billion have been given to Ukraine to the production of weapons. As I said in the past, the Ukrainians themselves said they can only pay for 1/3 of their defense industry's capacity. So Ukraine could produce 3 times as much if they had more money, and this has led to the First Nations, I think, to more and more nations. I think Denmark was the first one to give money to the Ukrainians to build what they want and what they need, and thus help Ukraine prevail in this fight. And finally, we have a picture of a German V-1 ARV, which has been modified in the typical Ukrainian way, with Contact 1 ERA being put everywhere it fits, and it actually looks pretty nice if we are honest about this. But that was it from me for today. If you like the situation report, please give it a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment in the comment section if you have anything to add, and if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. That's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.